The vase didn't just fall, it flew. It smashed against Dana's temple and sprayed tiny blue flowers across the white tiles like confetti from a cruel party. Warmth ran down her face, and the hallway inside their Ikoyi duplex went quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner and the slow drip of water from a leaky ceiling pipe. Calvin stood over her, chest heaving, fists tight, suit still on from work, tie loosened like a snake shedding skin. "You never listen," he said, voice low and mean. "Sloane likes things done a certain way. Do it her way. Friends, if you saw a scene like this, what would you do? Hit the like button if you've ever felt betrayed, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Your city, your country, drop it now so I can shout you out in the next episode." Dana pressed her palm to her head and blinked hard. She tasted iron. "Who is Sloane?" she whispered. The question was small, but it made Calvin's eyes go bright and ugly. He kicked at the broken pedals, then at the baseboard, then at nothing, like anger needed a stage and he was the dancer. "Don't ask me dumb questions," he snapped. "Just do what I say." He always spoke like the house belonged to him alone, even though both names sat on the deed and both faces smiled on the wedding photos lining the stairs. Two kids from different worlds who thought love could feed itself without daily bread. It always happened on Monday nights. Anyone who knew them would think Monday was their laundry day, their movie night, their small ritual after the madness of traffic on 3rd Mainland Bridge. But Monday was his ritual for something else. Monday was for corrections. Monday was when the charm wore off. Monday was when his phone lit up with a message from a contact named Office Log that was not an office and not a log. She had seen it once, the preview line, "Make it loud tonight so he remembers who's in charge." She hadn't understood then. She understood now. The house looked perfect to strangers. The soft rugs from a boutique in Lekki, the gold lamp that clicked on with a whisper, the framed art of a calm blue ocean. But perfection is a costume. Inside those walls, time had edges. Monday came with a clock you could not see, a switch you could not touch. If dinner was 1 minute late, if the plant by the TV showed dry soil, if his favorite shirt sat wrinkled on the back of a chair, punishment followed. It wasn't sudden. It was scheduled. Dana learned to memorize the sounds of his footsteps. On good days, heels light, whistle low, keys tossed into the tray like a small joke. On Mondays, shoes dragged a little. Breathing got heavier at the door. Keys paused inside the lock as if the house had to brace itself. And then he walked in with eyes that looked past her into some mirror that showed him bigger than he was. She told no one at first. When you start to drown slowly, you don't scream. You hold your breath and listen for a boat. She listened for months, waiting for luck to show up like a neighbor. Luck didn't come. Kim came. It was a hot Saturday in Yaba, and Kim pushed a bowl of pepper soup toward her across a noisy restaurant table and said, "You're flinching, Danny. You didn't used to flinch when spoons clinked." Dana tried to laugh. The sound came out wrong. Kim reached for her hand. "You can tell me. I won't judge you. I won't leave." Dana shook her head because saying it out loud would make it real. And once it was real, she would have to do something. Back home, Calvin slid money across the kitchen island like a gift. "You know I take care of you," he said. He always said it when he wanted to erase a bruise with a receipt. People out there wish they had what you have. They wish they were you. She stared at the sleek black card and felt nothing. She could buy 10 lamps with it, 1,000 bouquets, a new door with a better lock. None of those things would change Monday. He was not always a monster. That made it worse. On Thursdays he sent flowers to her office. On Saturdays he woke first and made pancakes with too much vanilla. On Sundays he held her waist in church like a man who loved openly. And then Monday arrived and the same hands turned into a storm. Dana started keeping a list on her phone under a boring title so he wouldn't notice. Shopping prices. That note wasn't about tomatoes or rice. She wrote dates. She wrote times. She wrote words like threw phone across room, shoved shoulder into wall, and said Sloane likes blankets tucked tight. She recorded how many seconds passed between a message she saw on his screen and a change in his face. Whenever she heard the name again, Sloane, she typed it behind a fake number like a math problem. Sloane equals Storm plus Monday. The first time she saw Sloane, it was by accident. A glass elevator in a tall building. Calvin said he was meeting a client. Dana came along because she decided to come along. You start to lose yourself one small permission at a time. To find yourself, you take them back the same way. The elevator doors opened on the 10th floor. A woman stood there in a green dress with a smile that cut the air like a clean blade. "Cal," she said like the name was sugar. Her eyes flicked to Dana, then back to him. "Am I late?" Calvin's face did a strange thing, a gentle tilt, a softness she only saw in old photos. "Right on time," he said. Dana felt something inside of her go quiet. Not the shy quiet. The quiet of a room after a party ends. They exchanged a quick handshake, Dana and Sloane, like strangers meeting at a bus stop. But Dana noticed the detail that gave everything away. Sloane's nails were painted the same pale blue as the vase that would later break. "Who is she?" Dana asked in the car, voice calm. He laughed like she had told a joke. "New operations lead," he said. "You met her. Be polite." He turned up the radio. The station played a soft song about never leaving. She looked at the road ahead and said nothing because the truth had no space to sit. That week Monday came early. A message buzzed on his phone during dinner. He glanced down, then up. His eyes pinned her to the chair. "This fork, why is it on the left?" he asked like it mattered more than air. She fixed it. He waited. "Napkin," he said. She folded it again. "Chair." She moved it in, then out, then in. All the small tasks turned into a maze. When he stood, the room shrank. "Sloane says a good home has order," he murmured. She grew up with standards. The sentence felt like a sentence. You can endure pain for a time if you think it will end. You can stay for a reason if you think the reason is love. But the body keeps its own calendar. The mind makes its own map. One afternoon, Dana walked into the guest room and saw the mirror on the wardrobe door. She didn't recognize the woman in it. Not the hair pulled back too hard. Not the mouth stuck between smile and silence. Not the eyes that looked busy even when still. She touched the glass. Her reflection touched it back and she thought, "I am not made for this." She started planning without calling it a plan. She took pictures of every bruise even when they looked small. She scanned the house for cameras and found two. Not his, strangely. Hers. Hidden by the company that did their home security, hardwired in places even Calvin forgot about. One in the hallway near the vase, one by the kitchen where words turned into weapons. She upgraded the cloud storage with her own card and set email alerts to a new address. Danaretzifliat. She saved voice notes after every Monday, speaking in a whisper behind the closed bathroom door. Today, 9:43 p.m., he said Sloane told him to make sure the floor was spotless and then pushed my shoulder when I walked past. She collected money in quiet ways. She sold a gold bracelet his mother had given her and replaced it with a fake that sparkled just as bright under restaurant lights. She told Kim the truth at last. They sat in Kim's small living room, feet tucked under them on a worn couch that had seen laughter and tears from other lives. "He hurts me," Dana said simply. Kim didn't gasp. She didn't say, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" She opened her laptop. "Okay," she said. "Let's make a folder. Let's back it up. Let's list people who can help. Let's find a shelter that takes couples on paper but believes women in person. Let's find a lawyer who doesn't talk too much." "I don't want to run," Dana said. "I want to end this." Kim nodded. "Then we give this story to the right ears and the right eyes," she answered. "But you stay safe while we gather the pages." The next Monday arrived like a drumline. Dana's day at work felt slow, every email a mile wide. She bought bread on the way home and chose the soft loaf, and her hands shook at the cashier when she punched in her PIN. At home, she put on a long-sleeve top even though the weather begged for short sleeves. She set her phone near the hallway camera and opened a new note in the shopping prices file. She typed the date. Monday, 7:12 p.m. She made tea and held the hot cup to the side of her face. People told her warmth can soothe, but warmth cannot fix a storm already rolling in. The lock clicked. Keys jingled. Footsteps paused. "Dana?" he called, voice smooth like nothing had ever broken in his life. She answered from the kitchen. "Hi." He walked in and tossed his jacket on a chair. That small act, the jacket, felt purposeful. He wanted things his way, but he wanted to show that he didn't have to follow his own rules. "Did you mop the hallway?" he asked. "Yes," she said. He pressed a finger to the floor and inspected it like he worked for a museum. "It's damp," he said. Dana knew it had been mopped 10 minutes ago. Damp meant clean. In his mouth, damp meant wrong. His phone buzzed. He didn't bother to hide it now. He smiled at the screen. She saw two words glow and vanish, blue light. He looked around the hallway. The broken vase had been replaced with a new one she bought for cheap at a market in Oshodi, same color. Whoa. He picked it up and weighed it in his hand. "Why do you always buy the wrong things?" he said. She felt her heart knock on her ribs. "It's the color you like," she answered quietly. "No," he said, almost gentle. "It's the color she likes." He set the vase down and stepped closer. "Say you're sorry," he murmured. Dana looked at him and saw something she had not allowed herself to name. Not love. Not grief. Fear, not hers, his. Fear of losing control of the story he wrote about himself. Men like Calvin build mirrors around their lives. Any face that doesn't smile in the glass becomes a threat. She exhaled. I'm not saying it tonight, she said. His expression changed. Monday moved in. He reached for the vase again, the one shaped like a summer sky, and she told herself not to flinch because flinching fed his performance. He swung, not at her head this time, but at the wall above her shoulder so the explosion of glass could say what words could not. Shards fell like rain. The camera caught the angle. The mic caught his breath. The email alert sang its quiet note to the hidden address miles away in cloud space. Look what you made me do, he said, the oldest line in the Book of Cowards. She stared at the mess. I won't clean that, she said. You threw it. You clean it. He laughed, shaking his head, almost impressed by her. So that's how we're playing. The phone buzzed again. He raised it. This time he read the message out loud, taunting like bad theater. Make it louder. He needs to remember who runs the show. He pointed to his chest, then to the ceiling like the house itself was audience. See? Standards. He stepped forward. She stepped back. Her heel hit the new shards. Pain bit her skin. She whispered, Cal, stop. He didn't. Something in Dana broke, but not the kind that spills. It was the kind that opens. She remembered Kim's voice. When it starts, don't argue. Don't explain. Move to where there's light. Move to where a door is close. Keep your phone on you. Keep your plan in your head. Dana backed into the kitchen where the sensor light made everything bright. She slipped her phone into her pocket and swiped up twice, just like she practiced, to start the voice recorder without looking. Her hands were steady now. Her voice was clear. I won't do this anymore, she said. I won't live like this. He stopped and studied her like a puzzle he didn't buy. The silence stretched. You think you can leave? He said finally. You think anyone will believe you? He waved at the Ring camera near the door and smirked. All those videos? I can make them disappear. He was wrong. She had backups inside backups. But she kept her face blank. We'll see, she said. He moved closer, ready to shove, ready to make the night play his part. She braced herself, and then the front gate clanged. Two voices carried in from outside, the security guard and a woman's laugh that didn't belong to a neighbor. High, sharp, careless. The doorbell rang like a dare. Calvin turned his head and walked away from her as if her body were a pause button he could press anytime. He smoothed his shirt, wiped his palm on his pant leg and pasted on a smile. Fix your face, he said over his shoulder. We have company. He didn't ask who. He already knew. Dana stood in the kitchen doorway, blood drying at her hairline, feet stinging, chest tight. She heard the lock, the swing of the door, and the smell of expensive perfume pushing into the house like a third person moving in. Sloane stepped inside wearing silver heels and a white blouse tied neat at the waist, eyes in a hurry to find the center of the room. She glanced once at the mess in the hallway, once at Dana and then at Calvin. Her smile widened. Hey Cal, she said softly as if the night belonged to her alone. Ready to talk plans? He moved toward Sloane like she was air. He didn't introduce the women. He didn't apologize for broken blue glass. He didn't notice the small red line drawing down Dana's temple like a slow tear. Sloane held up a thin folder and tapped it against her palm. I wrote out your Monday routine, she said lightly like it was a gym schedule. Structure helps. Dana felt the floor tilt. The words clicked together in her head and formed a single idea so bright it scared her. They planned it. It wasn't just a temper. It wasn't just a bad day. It was choreography. A calendar invite. A shared habit. Monday nights had minutes and markers and notes. You said you wanted me to manage the home flow, Sloane went on, flipping open the folder. I added a checklist, kitchen surfaces, bed sheets where the towels should hang, and consequences when things aren't in place. People respond to systems. She turned and really looked at Dana then like a scientist studying a new bug. We all do better with rules, don't we? She said, sweet and sour at once. Dana's hand slid into her pocket and pressed the phone hard, making sure the recorder still ran. She kept her face calm, her breath even, and she remembered every lesson Kim had drilled into her. Do not show them your plan. Do not show them your fear. Collect, collect, collect. She stepped forward, not away, and lifted her chin. Then read your rules out loud, she said to Sloane, voice steady. If we're running a show, the audience should hear the lines. Sloane blinked, surprised. Calvin chuckled. Hear that? He said to Sloane. She wants a performance. He took the folder from Sloane with a little bow and started to read, not joking, not shy, like a boss reciting company policy. Monday, he said. Kitchen inspected by 7:15. Floors checked by 7:20. Dinner placed by 7:30. If standards are not met. He looked up and smiled at Dana. Behavioral correction. Dana held his gaze and nodded slowly as if buying time from a shopkeeper who sold minutes. Go on, she said. Sloane leaned her hip against the console table, tapping her silver heel, the picture of casual cruelty. The hallway camera's little eye watched, unblinking. The cloud folder took note. The email alert readied itself like a silent friend. The clock on the stove ticked to 7:28. Street noise floated in through the half-closed door, the chorus of Lagos evenings, generators humming, distant horns, a hawker calling out hot suya. Life kept going on the other side of the wall. Inside, time narrowed to the next word he would say and the next step she would take. She needed one more sentence. One more clear, awful sentence that proved intent, pattern, plan. She needed him to name it. Calvin tilted his head and read the last line in a calm voice that felt like ice water down her spine. If the home fails Sloane's standards, he said, I apply pressure until it learns. Dana's skin went cold then hot. The phone in her pocket captured it, every word, every tone. She didn't answer. She didn't argue. She simply reached behind her and flipped the hall switch, flooding the walkway with bright light that threw long shadows of the three of them against the wall. The broken blue glass glinted like witnesses. Sloane's smile faltered for the first time. Why did you? She began. The front gate clanged again. This time it wasn't the guard or a neighbor. It was a knock that sounded official. Hard, precise, patient. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Calvin frowned. Sloane's eyes cut to the door. Dana stared at the doorknob and felt her heart slam into her ribs once, twice, 3 times, and then steady, as if some quiet part of her had been waiting for this sound. Another knock. The voice outside was clear and firm. Good evening. We're here about a complaint. Dana's breath caught in her throat. Calvin's jaw tightened. Sloane's hand closed around the folder. The hallway light hummed. The recorder glowed in Dana's pocket. And then the handle began to turn. The knock on the door wasn't just sound, it was weight, heavy and deliberate, as though someone was striking at more than wood and steel. Dana's chest felt the echo before her ears fully caught it, and the kitchen where she stood, surrounded by broken shards of a blue vase, suddenly seemed too bright under the hallway light. Blood had dried at her temple, streaking down her cheek in a thin red line. Her bare feet were already cut from the glass scattered across the floor, but she didn't flinch. Not anymore. Calvin stiffened, though he tried to hide it with the false calm of a man who had practiced masks his whole life. His eyes flicked toward the door, then toward her, sharp as knives, promising later punishments if she dared to speak. Sloane's perfume still lingered in the air, heavy and expensive, and she held the folder tighter against her chest, her silver heel tapping nervously against the tile. The knock came again, 3 sharp beats, pause, then 3 again. The rhythm was unmistakable. Not a neighbor. Not a guard. Something else. Dana's breath caught. 4 months she had collected evidence in silence, whispering into her phone when the bathroom fan covered her voice, storing pictures and audio in secret folders. For months she had prayed for something like this. Knock. She just never knew if it would actually come. Calvin forced his face into a smile, as though the sound at the door were nothing but an inconvenience. Who is it? He barked, voice too loud. From outside, a man's voice carried clearly, Good evening. We are here in response to a complaint. Please open the door. The word complaint struck Calvin like a slap. He covered it with a laugh, but Dana saw his knuckles whiten. He threw her a quick, furious glance, the kind that used to make her shrink. This time she didn't lower her eyes. She stayed still, hands at her sides, her pulse steady even though her legs trembled inside. Sloane leaned close to him, whispering urgently, You didn't say anyone was coming. He waved her off like an annoying child. Straightening his shirt collar, he called out, One moment. Then he turned and hissed toward Dana, Not a word. She said nothing, but the silence between them was different now. It was defiance, not obedience. He cracked the door open just wide enough for his body to block the view inside. 2 men stood there in plain dark suits, not police but official enough to radiate authority. One carried a brown envelope, thick with documents. The other held a small recording device, its red light blinking softly. Mr. Calvin Carter? The taller one asked. Calvin's smile widened, false warmth dripping from every syllable. Yes, that's me. What seems to be the issue? The man extended the envelope slightly but did not release it. We've received multiple reports of domestic misconduct filed through a legal aid foundation. We're here to verify the conditions and follow up. Calvin chuckled, shaking his head. Reports? This must be a mistake. His tone was light, but his hand trembled as it hovered near the envelope. Sloane's sharp eyes darted between the men and Calvin, her jaw tight. The shorter investigator raised the recording device and clicked it on. The red light glowed brighter. We'll need to step inside, sir. Verification requires transparency. Calvin hesitated, then forced another laugh. Gentlemen, it's late. This isn't the time. The taller one didn't move. With respect, sir, it is exactly the time. Please let us in. Calvin's jaw clenched, his smile cracking. After a long pause, he stepped aside with a stiff motion. Fine. Come in. The men entered, eyes sweeping the space. They saw the broken vase in the hallway first, the shards scattered across the floor, fresh dampness still on the tiles. Accident? The taller one asked. Calvin shrugged and forced a laugh. Yes, clumsy wife. Vases, always breaking. He gestured toward Dana with a cruel grin, as though mocking her even in front of witnesses. The investigator's gaze followed his hand and stopped on her face. He saw the dried blood, the bruise forming at her temple, the cuts on her bare feet. His eyes lingered long, saying more than his mouth dared yet. Sloane stepped forward quickly, voice smooth but shaking at the edges. This is unnecessary. Mr. Carter is a respected businessman. You don't just walk into someone's home with vague accusations. Where is your warrant? The shorter man turned the recording device slightly toward her. We don't need one. The complaints are extensive, and the evidence already provided is more than enough to require inspection. He shifted his gaze back to Dana. Ma'am, are you Mrs. Dana Carter? Dana's throat was dry, but her voice came out steady. Yes. Do you confirm that you sent the materials? Calvin whipped his head toward her, rage boiling, but she kept her chin high. Yes, she said again, louder this time. I sent them. The room shifted. Calvin's mask dropped, his face twisting into fury. He took a step toward her, fists curling, but the taller investigator raised a firm hand. Step back, sir. Calvin froze, chest heaving, his breath loud and ugly. Dana reached slowly into her pocket, pulling out her phone. She tapped the screen, and suddenly the kitchen filled with his own voice from a recording, calm, chilling, undeniable. Monday. Kitchen inspected by 7:15. Floors checked by 7:20. Dinner placed by 7:30. If standards are not met, behavioral correction. If the home fails Sloane's standards, I apply pressure until it learns. The words echoed, bouncing off walls, impossible to deny. Sloane's face went pale, the folder trembling in her hands. Cal, she whispered but stopped. The investigators exchanged a quick glance. The shorter one pulled several photographs from the brown envelope and fanned them across the table. Pictures of Dana's bruises, her swollen lip, the cracked phone screen, and the chilling screenshot of a message from Sloane herself. Make it loud tonight so he remembers who's in charge. The silence afterward was a blade. Calvin roared suddenly, lunging forward like a caged animal, but the investigators blocked him instantly. Enough, the taller barked. He stumbled back, fury consuming him, spittle at the corners of his mouth. Sloane backed away, her silver heels clicking in uneven panic. Dana stood taller than she had in months, her body trembling but her spirit strong. You wanted a performance, she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos. Now everyone has a front row seat. The investigators began photographing everything. The broken glass, the blood, the bruise on her face. One bent close, asking softly, Do you need medical attention now, ma'am? Dana shook her head, her eyes fixed on Calvin slumped against the couch, rage pouring out of him like smoke from a fire about to die. Sloane's mask had shattered too. Her perfect smile was gone, her hands clutching the folder like it could still save her. This is madness, she stammered. You don't understand, but the investigator cut her off firmly. We understand. This isn't the first time we've heard of either of you. You've built a pattern and it's over. Calvin groaned, rubbing his face with both hands, suddenly smaller, suddenly fragile in the bright light. Dana saw him clearly now, not as the monster of Monday nights, but as a man cornered by his own cruelty, drowning in the evidence of his crimes. For the first time she wasn't afraid. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't silent. She was free even if freedom still stood at the door waiting to enter fully. She took a slow step forward, glass crunching under her feet, and whispered, Monday nights are over. The words hung in the air, final and sharp. The investigators nodded, signaling that the case would move forward, that her evidence was enough, that her voice had been heard. Outside, the sounds of Legos carried on, horns, laughter, suya smoke drifting into the night. Life outside was indifferent, but inside, time had frozen on one image. Dana, bloodied but unbroken, standing tall while the man who thought he owned her trembled, and the mistress who had choreographed her pain clutched her folder like a sinking ship. Dana's phone still glowed in her hand, the recorder capturing every second. The evidence was safe, locked into cloud folders far beyond Calvin's reach. This was not the end. This was the beginning of something larger. As the investigators prepared to escort Calvin out, Dana whispered to herself, voice steady, "This is just the beginning." And the door, which had once felt like a prison gate, now stood wide open, letting in the sound of footsteps and the promise of revenge yet to come. The night after the investigators left the house, Dana sat alone in the guest bedroom, the same room where she had once stared into the mirror and failed to recognize herself. The silence was thick, but it wasn't the kind of silence that crushed her anymore. It was the kind of silence that opens a door. Her phone sat on the nightstand, still glowing faintly from the files she had saved and uploaded to secure drives. Every recording, every bruise, every message from Sloane had been duplicated, stored, and sent to contacts she trusted. Kim had helped her prepare a chain of safety. One copy here, another there, like seeds planted across a field. Even if one was destroyed, another would grow. She breathed slowly, her head leaning back against the wall, the bruise on her temple throbbing in time with her heartbeat. 4 months she had survived by shrinking, by folding herself into smaller shapes, by waiting for Mondays to pass. Tonight something shifted. She was still hurting, but she was not small anymore. Calvin had not been arrested yet. The investigators had promised that paperwork would move forward, that statements would be filed, that follow-up would come quickly. But men like Calvin had always lived in a world where consequences moved slowly, if they moved at all. He had money. He had friends in the right places. He had charm, the kind that could dazzle judges and blind church members. Dana knew he would not go down easily. That was why she could not sit still and wait. She had to keep pressing. She had to dismantle him piece by piece, not only with legal evidence, but with humiliation, with truth laid bare where his charm could not cover it. In the master bedroom across the hall, she heard him pacing, his voice muffled but sharp. Sloane was still with him. Dana could picture her, silver heels now discarded, blouse wrinkled from the tension of the night. Sloane's voice rose once, high and sharp. "You said you had this under control." Calvin barked back, his anger spilling through the walls. "Shut up. I'll fix it." Then silence, broken only by the sound of a drawer slamming shut. Dana closed her eyes, memorizing every sound. He was still clinging to power, still pretending he could bend the world back into shape. Let him try, she thought. The more he fought, the harder he would fall. By morning, the house was too quiet. Sloane was gone, leaving only the faint trace of perfume in the hallway. Calvin sat at the dining table in a crisp white shirt, his suit jacket draped neatly over the back of the chair. His laptop was open and his phone was pressed to his ear. Dana lingered in the doorway long enough to catch fragments of his conversation. "Yes, I'll handle it." "No, the board won't hear about this." "She's exaggerating, you know how women are." "Yes, I'll meet you at the club later." He looked up then and their eyes met. His smile was strange, forced, stretched too thin. "You're up early," he said. She didn't answer. She poured herself a glass of water, her hand steady even under his stare. He leaned back in his chair. "They can't touch me," he said suddenly, as if to reassure himself. "Do you hear me, Dana? They can't touch me." She sipped the water and let the silence answer. Inside, though, her mind was racing. He was already on the defensive, already scrambling to protect his image. That was where she would strike. His reputation was his armor. Strip it away and he would have nothing left. She walked back to the guest room without a word, closed the door and opened her laptop. Her fingers moved quickly, pulling up the folder of evidence, reviewing the files one by one. The audio of him reading Sloane's checklist. The photo of the cracked vase. The bruises documented in careful sequence. The screenshot of Sloane's text. She attached them to an email, addressed it to Kim, and typed a short message. "Send to the blog. The one with reach." She hit send, then sat back, her heart pounding. By noon, the story was everywhere. An anonymous exposé appeared on a popular Lagos lifestyle blog titled, "Behind Closed Doors of Ikoyi, The Monday Night Rituals of a Respected Businessman." The article detailed the evidence without naming Dana directly, but everyone who knew Calvin recognized him. The description of the duplex, the leaked messages, the recordings, there was no mistaking it. Comments poured in within minutes. Some expressed shock, some defended him, some whispered that they had always suspected something was off. By the end of the day, the story had spread to Twitter, Facebook, and WhatsApp groups across the city. His face, once admired in glossy magazine profiles, was now circulating with captions like, "Monster in a suit, and this is who you really are?" Calvin came home that night like a storm contained in a man's body. He slammed the door, his tie half undone, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. "What did you do?" he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. Dana stood in the kitchen, peeling an orange slowly, her movements calm, deliberate. "I told the truth," she said simply. His eyes bulged, his fists clenched, but he stopped short of striking her. The investigator's warning still echoed in his mind. "Do you know what you've done to me?" he spat. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. "Yes," she said. "Exactly what you did to me." He cursed, pacing the room, muttering about lawyers, about spin, about friends who owed him favors. "They'll believe me," he said, as though repeating it would make it true. "I'll tell them you're bitter, unstable, making things up. No one will side with you." Dana smiled faintly, slicing the orange into neat segments. "Then why are you sweating?" she asked softly. His face twisted, but he said nothing. He stormed out, slamming the bedroom door behind him. The next morning, the headlines grew worse. A local television station picked up the story. A former employee of Calvin's company came forward anonymously, confirming that Sloane had an unusual level of influence over him, that she often made decisions that hurt the business but pleased her personally. Another article quoted a neighbor who claimed to have heard shouting and crashes every Monday night. The narrative was spreading beyond Dana's control now, but she didn't care. The truth had its own momentum. At the office, Calvin's colleagues whispered. At the club, where he once walked in with ease, people turned their heads and muttered behind their glasses. Business partners hesitated to take his calls. A meeting scheduled for Thursday was suddenly postponed indefinitely. The life he had built on control and appearances was unraveling thread by thread. Dana watched it happen quietly, methodically. She didn't gloat. She didn't shout. She simply documented each step, each reaction, each headline. She sent them to Kim with short notes. Phase 1, Phase 2. Kim replied with encouragement, reminding her to stay safe, reminding her that revenge was not just about victory but about survival. Sloane reappeared once, late at night, her hair pulled back, her face drawn. Dana overheard them arguing in the living room. Sloane's voice was sharp, desperate. "You promised me. You said she would never win. Now everyone is looking at me like I'm poison." Calvin barked back, "Shut your mouth. You're nothing without me." The fight ended with the slam of a door and the squeal of tires as Sloane sped away. Dana smiled faintly in the darkness. One by one his allies were slipping away. But she knew it wasn't enough yet. A man like Calvin would cling to power until the last scrap was ripped from his hands. He would beg, he would threaten, he would manipulate. She had to strike harder. She had to destroy the foundation he stood on, his business, his wealth, his public mask. She had to show the world not just the bruises on her body, but the rot in his soul. And she would. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but soon. Very soon. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself in the dark. This is just the beginning. The first signs of Calvin's collapse came quietly, like cracks in a glass too fine for the eye to notice. A canceled meeting here, a partner's polite excuse there. Dana watched it happen from the edges of his life, silent as a shadow, recording every detail in her mind. By the second week after the story broke, the cracks became fractures. His company board sent him a formal notice, requesting his presence at an emergency meeting. The letter was printed on heavy cream paper, but its words carried the weight of judgment. Dana saw it sitting on the dining table, unopened, his name bold at the top. He walked past it 3 times before finally tearing it open. His eyes scanned the lines, and for the first time, she saw something in him that wasn't anger or arrogance. She saw fear. That night, he tried to speak to her differently. No shouting, no fists, no threats. Just words, clumsy and strange on his tongue. "Dana," he said, sitting at the far end of the couch, his hands rubbing together nervously. "We can fix this. You and me. If you just say it's not true, they'll believe you. They'll believe a wife." Dana looked at him, her face calm, her hands folded in her lap. "You want me to lie for you?" she said softly. He leaned forward quickly. "Not a lie. Just a correction. You've always been good with words." She tilted her head, studying him like he was a stranger. "You used my words against me for years. And now you want me to use them for you." His jaw clenched. "If I go down, you go down with me. Don't forget that." She smiled faintly. "We'll see." The board meeting came 2 days later. Calvin dressed in his finest navy suit, the one tailored to fit him like armor. He sprayed cologne twice, slicked back his hair, and practiced his smile in the mirror. Dana watched from the hallway, her arms crossed. He caught her gaze in the reflection. "You enjoy this, don't you?" he snapped. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He slammed the door as he left, but his footsteps down the marble stairs sounded less like victory and more like retreat. Dana called Kim as soon as the door shut. Her friend's voice was steady on the line. "Are you ready?" Dana nodded, even though Kim couldn't see. "Yes, it's time." They had planned this step carefully. The Legal Aid Foundation had enough evidence to pursue charges, but the wheels of justice were slow. The court dates would drag on. Dana wanted something swifter. Together, they had prepared a second wave of exposure. Documents of Calvin's financial irregularities, transfers to Sloane's account, receipts for expensive jewelry bought under the company name, photos of them at exclusive clubs when he claimed to be on business trips. All of it neatly packaged, ready for release. "Once this drops," Kim warned, "there's no going back." Dana's voice was firm. "There's no going back anyway." That afternoon, while Calvin sat in the boardroom trying to charm men who were no longer charmed, the second wave hit the internet. A well-known investigative journalist tweeted a thread that spread like wildfire. Exposed. Businessman Calvin Carter funded Mistress's lifestyle with company money. Evidence inside. Screenshots followed, along with bank statements and photos. Within an hour, the story was trending. Hashtags multiplied. Hashtag Calvin the fraud, hashtag Monday Monster. Commenters didn't hold back. "So he beats his wife and steals from his company? Jail this man already. How many Sloanes are out there?" By the time Calvin returned home that evening, his face was gray, his shoulders hunched. He didn't slam the door this time. He closed it gently, like the house might shatter if he made too much noise. Dana was in the kitchen again, her safe place now, slicing vegetables with slow, steady movements. He walked in and stared at her. "What do you want from me?" he asked hoarsely. She turned, knife in hand, the light glinting off the blade. "What do I want?" she echoed softly. "I wanted peace. I wanted love. I wanted safety. You gave me bruises, silence, and Mondays. Now I want justice." His eyes darkened. "Justice is for courts, not for you." She laid the knife down carefully and met his gaze. "Then maybe I'm not looking for justice. Maybe I'm looking for revenge." He flinched as though struck. For a moment, the mask slipped and she saw the small, scared boy beneath the monster. But only for a moment. Then his fists clenched again, his body tensed, his old self trying to rise. She straightened, her chin lifted. "Try it," she whispered. "The cameras are still on. The evidence is still uploading. Every move you make now belongs to the world." His hand twitched at his side, then fell. He turned and stormed upstairs, the sound of his footsteps heavy, defeated. Over the next week, Calvin's empire crumbled faster. The board suspended him pending investigation. His phone buzzed constantly with messages he ignored. Friends stopped answering. His driver quit. His credit card was frozen by the bank after suspicious activity was flagged. He shouted at the walls, at the empty air, at Dana, but his power was fading. Each Monday came and went, but he didn't lift a hand. He couldn't. He knew every breath was being watched. Dana walked freely through the house now, her shoulders straight, her eyes unflinching. She wore bright colors again, soft dresses that felt like freedom. She even laughed once in the kitchen with Kim, and the sound startled her. It had been so long since it left her mouth. Sloane tried to call him several times, but he blocked her. She appeared at the gate once, demanding to be let in, but the guard refused. Her screams echoed down the street. "You can't leave me like this, Cal. We're in this together." Dana watched from the upstairs window, her lips curving into the faintest smile. Sloane was crumbling too, abandoned by the man she thought was her shield. The mistress who had written checklists for abuse was now shut out, her power dissolved. But Dana wasn't finished. She knew Calvin still had one weapon left: denial. If he could spin the narrative, if he could convince enough people that she was unstable, he might salvage his reputation. She had to take that weapon away. She had to bring her story out of the shadows and tell it herself. So she called the journalist who had broken the financial story. Her voice was steady as she spoke on the phone. "I'm ready to go on record," she said. "No more anonymous wife. My name is Dana Carter, and I want people to hear my voice." The journalist hesitated. "This could get dangerous for you." Dana closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. "It's already dangerous. The only safety I have now is the truth." The interview aired 3 nights later on primetime television. Dana sat in a simple blue dress, her hair tied back, her face bare of makeup. The bruise on her temple had faded to a shadow, but she didn't hide it. Her voice was calm as she told her story, beginning with the first Monday, moving through the years of silence, the bruises, the broken vases, the messages from Sloane. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just spoke, steady and clear. He wanted Mondays to belong to her. He wanted me to hurt so she could feel powerful. But I'm done. I won't be silent anymore. The city erupted. Viewers flooded the station with messages of support. Women wrote that they recognized themselves in her story. Men wrote that they admired her courage. Hashtags shifted. Hashtag stand with Dana. Hashtag Monday no more. Calvin's name became synonymous not with power, but with disgrace. At home, Calvin watched the interview alone, the television light flickering across his hollow face. When it ended, he stood slowly, walked to the bar, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. His hand trembled so badly the liquid spilled. He stared into the glass, then hurled it at the wall. The crash echoed through the house. Dana, upstairs, heard it and smiled faintly. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was winning. But victories bring desperation. And desperation makes dangerous men reckless. 2 nights later, she returned home late from meeting Kim. The house was dark. Too dark. She stepped inside cautiously, the hairs on her arms rising. "Calvin?" she called softly. No answer. She moved toward the kitchen, her footsteps careful. Suddenly, a hand shot out from the shadows, grabbing her wrist. She gasped, spinning, and found him there, his face twisted, his eyes wild. "You ruined me," he hissed. "You think you've won, but you haven't. You'll never be free of me." Her heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. She met his wild gaze head-on. "You're already gone," she whispered. He pulled her closer, his breath hot and bitter on her face. "If I can't have my life, you can't have yours either." He raised his other hand, something glinting in it, metal sharp. And in that moment, the door burst open behind them. A flood of light filled the room. Voices shouted. Heavy footsteps pounded on the floor. Calvin froze, his grip tightening then loosening. Dana turned her head just enough to see them. Uniformed officers, weapons drawn, eyes locked on him. "Mr. Calvin Carter," one barked. "Drop it. Now." The blade slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. His shoulders sagged. The officers swarmed, pulling him back, pinning his arms. Dana stumbled away, clutching her wrist, her breath ragged but unbroken. The scene burned itself into her mind. Calvin dragged out of the house in handcuffs, his face pale, his mouth still spitting curses. And as the door slammed behind him, Dana stood in the center of the kitchen, chest heaving, eyes blazing. This was what she had waited for. This was justice. But in her heart, she knew it was not the end. Calvin was powerful. Men like him had ways of twisting, escaping, clawing back pieces of control. The fight was not over. Not yet. The cliffhanger was clear, sharp, and undeniable. The war between Dana and Calvin had only entered its most dangerous stage. And Monday night was coming again. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut around Calvin's wrists had echoed in Dana's ears for days. Even after the officers dragged him out of the house, even after the front gate closed behind their patrol cars, she could still hear it. Metal against metal. A final punctuation to years of Mondays. But she also knew echoes fade, and men like Calvin didn't go down quietly. He had money tucked away, lawyers who could spin lies into silk, and a mistress who might still believe in him enough to fight by his side. She couldn't relax yet. Not until it was over, truly over. The next morning, the house felt emptier than ever. The marble floors carried her footsteps like whispers. The air smelled faintly of whiskey and sweat, remnants of his last desperate night inside. She walked from room to room, her hand brushing over the surfaces, reclaiming them one by one. The dining table where he used to bark orders was now hers. The staircase where she once clutched the railing in fear was now just wood and steel. The kitchen, her battlefield, was finally a place she could breathe in. Still, she felt the weight of unfinished business pressing on her chest. On the news, his arrest dominated the headlines. Prominent businessman in custody over domestic abuse allegations. Shocking evidence of financial misconduct surfaces. Commentators debated on air whether he would be granted bail. Lawyers argued about the strength of the case. But the evidence Dana had collected was overwhelming. The recordings, the photos, the financial documents, and her own voice broadcast to millions. She had been silenced for too long. Now her words were louder than his fists ever were. Kim visited that evening, bringing takeout in paper bags and a hug that lasted longer than usual. "You did it," she whispered. Dana shook her head. "Not yet. He'll try to twist his way out." They ate at the kitchen island, the two of them side by side like sisters holding vigil. "He's dangerous," Kim said quietly. "Promise me you'll be careful." Dana nodded, but her eyes stayed sharp. "I'm not afraid of him anymore." Meanwhile, in the holding cell downtown, Calvin sat on a metal bench, his expensive suit wrinkled, his tie gone. The walls were gray, the air thick with sweat and despair from other men who had passed through. He hated it. Hated the smell, the noise, the loss of control. But more than anything, he hated her. Dana. The woman he had dismissed as weak, the woman he thought he owned. She had turned the world against him. His lawyer leaned close, speaking in hushed tones. "We can argue fabrication, exaggeration. If we attack her credibility..." Calvin cut him off. "Destroy her," he snarled. "Make her regret every word." But outside those walls, Sloane was already unraveling. The press had found her name in the leaked bank transfers. Photos of her entering and leaving luxury boutiques surfaced online. Bloggers pieced together her role in the Monday rituals. She went from being Calvin's secret weapon to his liability overnight. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, reporters camped outside her apartment, and her employer at the company cut her off completely. She stormed into the police station one afternoon, heels clicking, demanding to see him. They turned her away. Cameras caught her shouting, "You promised me, Cal." The footage went viral. Memes labeled her Mistress of Mondays. She was finished. Dana watched it all unfold from the safety of Kim's apartment, where she had temporarily moved. It was safer there, away from the house where memories still lingered like ghosts. Each night, she scrolled through the flood of messages online. Women sent her private notes. "Your courage gave me strength." Men sent apologies on behalf of the ones who had looked away. For the first time, she felt seen. Not as Calvin's wife. Not as a victim. But as herself. The court hearings began quickly, pressure from the public forcing the system to move faster than usual. Dana walked into the courtroom on the first day wearing a simple black dress, her hair tied back, her head high. The room was packed. Journalists, activists, curious onlookers. Calvin sat across from her at the defense table, still trying to look composed, though his eyes were bloodshot and his hands restless. He smirked at her once, as if to remind her he still thought himself untouchable. She didn't blink. She just stared back, her face calm, her heart steady. The prosecutor laid out the case, presenting the evidence piece by piece. The recordings of his voice. The photographs of her injuries. The bank statements showing money funneled to Sloane. The text messages dripping with cruelty. Each piece landed like a hammer blow. The jury shifted uncomfortably, their eyes flicking toward Calvin with growing disgust. His lawyer tried to object, tried to spin, tried to suggest Dana had fabricated it all out of spite. But the evidence was too strong, too detailed, too undeniable. On the third day, Dana took the stand. The courtroom hushed as she raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth. Her voice was steady as she told her story, beginning with the first Monday he struck her, moving through the years of silence, the bruises, the fear, the vase that shattered like her peace. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She spoke like a woman finally free of fear, every word sharp and clear. "He thought Mondays belonged to him," she said quietly. "But they belong to me too. And I won't let him take them anymore." Calvin's face twisted as she spoke, his mask slipping in front of everyone. He muttered to his lawyer, his fists clenched on the table, his jaw grinding. For once, people saw the man Dana had lived with. Not the charming businessman. Not the philanthropist who smiled for cameras. They saw the monster beneath, and they believed her. Sloane was called next. She tried to lie, tried to say she had nothing to do with it. But the texts were read aloud, her own words betraying her. "Make it loud tonight. He needs to remember who's in charge." The courtroom gasped. She broke down then, sobbing, begging for mercy, insisting she had only been playing along. But the damage was done. Her reputation, her career, her future, all destroyed. When the trial ended, the judge's voice rang clear, "Guilty." Calvin was sentenced to years behind bars for domestic violence, fraud, and financial misconduct. Sloane faced charges too, her own punishment waiting. The courtroom erupted in chatter, journalists rushing to file their stories, cameras flashing. Dana sat still, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm. She had won. Not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been silenced, for every bruise hidden under long sleeves, for every Monday that felt like a curse. As Calvin was led away in handcuffs, his eyes locked on hers. For the first time there was no rage, no smirk, no mask. Just emptiness. She met his gaze steadily, then turned away. He no longer mattered. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around her. Microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. "Dana, how do you feel?" She paused, then answered simply, "Free." The word spread like fire. #Dana is free trended within hours. People held signs outside the courthouse. Strangers sent her flowers. The world finally knew her name, not as Calvin's wife, but as Dana, survivor, fighter, victor. That night, she returned to her house alone. She walked through each room slowly, reclaiming them fully this time. The bedroom where she once cried was now just a room. The hallway where the vase had shattered was just tiles and paint. The kitchen, her sanctuary, glowed under the warm lights. She poured herself a glass of water, stood at the counter and whispered, "It's over." But then she smiled faintly, shaking her head. "No, it's just beginning." Because freedom was not just the absence of fear. It was the presence of choice. She had choices now. To rebuild. To love again someday. To laugh without flinching. To walk through Mondays without dread. To live. She picked up her phone, recorded a short video, and uploaded it to her social media. Her voice was calm, her eyes bright. "My name is Dana Carter. For years I was silent. But silence never protects us. I chose to speak and now I am free. If you are afraid, if you are hurting, know this. You are not alone. Speak. The world will hear you." The video went viral overnight. Millions watched. Thousands shared their own stories. A movement began, sparked by one woman's courage. Dana lay in bed that night, the city lights glowing through the window, her phone buzzing with notifications. She smiled softly, her heart steady, her soul light. For the first time in years, she slept without fear. And when Monday morning came, the sun streamed through the windows, warm and golden. No fists, no shouting, no fear. Just light, just peace, just freedom. The cycle was broken. The story was finished. Dana was free.